She is easier than my son was through 6 weeks, so that's kind of, I expected her to be equal to that.
If I could invite people to take their seats, please, so that we could get started momentarily. We've got a great and a mammoth agenda to work our way through, so I wanted to get us started on that. Let me do the roll call. Yusuf Ahmad.
Present.
Thank you. Debbie Elsa. Terry England.
Here.
Christine Fisher.
Here.
Mike Graham, present teacher. Thank you. Tony Hobson, not yet. Gary Lindgren. Here. Yet. Michael Cameras. Twylan O'Neill.
Here.
Odell Owens. Present. Cheryl Rose.
Here.
Laura Sam McGrath.
Here.
Pastor Tate, not yet. And Vanessa White, not yet. Sally Westheimer, however, is a yet. So thank you very much. As I said, we have a formidable agenda. There's a lot of material on here, plus an executive session to boot just for good behavior. I will say at the beginning that Shiloh sends her regrets. She was unable to join us today for a variety of reasons. Most importantly, she has a family medical issue that just popped up regarding her father-in-law. And so do kind of have her in your thoughts, if you would. With that, there's the agenda approval. The agenda that we're approving is the agenda that should be at your places. It has some notable changes in the middle under quality improvement. You'll see that we're going to be bringing something, a minor financial matter, to your attention for approval. There's one more addition that I'd like to make, this hot off the press. So between numbers 7 and 8, what I'd like to do is insert an update to you regarding this projected CPP-CPS joint board meeting that we've talked about. That is not easy. I'll just put it there, and we'll get to it following the executive session. So with that change, I'd entertain a motion, please, to approve the agenda. Thank you, Cheryl, and a second on that. Thank you very much, Micah. So all those in favor, aye. Aye. Those opposed or abstaining? So on a motion made by Cheryl Rose and seconded by Micah Cameras, the agenda was approved as amended, which brings us then to the minutes themselves. They were circulated in the pre-read. I presume you had an opportunity to review them. Is there any correction, comments that you would like to make in them? Floor is open. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion then to approve them.
Second.
Who was that other voice? Okay. We'll give that a tie. Making the motion. Odell, that was you on the second, I think. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Those opposed or abstaining? So on a motion made and a photo finished by Debbie Elsa and Laura Sandberg. This is like the Kentucky Derby, isn't it? And then seconded by Odell Owens. The minutes themselves were unanimously approved, which gets us into the next item. Are there public comments that people have registered? Thank you. So then we'll go into the committee updates. We've had the equity plan in front of us several times. The executive committee has reviewed it. We saw it as a board in the last meeting. I was pleased to see that accompanying the equity plan this time is that implementation document, so to speak. We are not going to be approving the implementation document. I think that that's the kind of document where we're going to want to seek board input and figure out the mechanism or process for us to be able to do that best, but we can put that aside entirely, and it's really the equity document itself that we want to focus on. Laura, I'll turn it over to you, please, to lead us through that part of the conversation.
Sure. Given that we have the implementation plan mainly as a point of reference, so you have an idea what this will look like going forward. I think you've all seen the equity policy. back to back with the CPS equity policy now for a couple of months in a row. We've worked to incorporate all the feedback we've received, clarifying some of the language. So hopefully you've seen your feedback reflected in this document. And I don't really think I have anything more to add. There haven't been any substantive changes since the last time you saw it.
I appreciated seeing in the implementation document the way in which those 5 key areas were called out with sort of 3 levels, so to speak, of achievement behind them. Getting this right is going to take a long time, I think, and I appreciate the way that it sets in front of the organization a lot of important things for us to ambition. The data collection alone is going to be formidable, you know, and so one of the things that we will want regularly to revisit on board agendas going forward is, so how are we doing with respect to like tracking data so that we can see in point of fact how we're making progress. Do other people want to make comments about the equity policy before we propose it for a vote?
I'll just say I love the form of the rubric here because it does create measurable and more objective measures of what success looks like, and it helps us be able to track that.
Other comments? In the absence of comments, then I'd entertain a motion, please, to approve the equity plan.
So moved.
Thank you, Yusuf, and a second for that then.
Second.
Thank you very much. Was that Terry? Thank you very much. Those in favor then, aye. Aye. Those opposed or abstaining? So let's give Lauren a hand for good work. So on the motion made by Yusuf Ahmad and seconded by Terry England, the equity plan was unanimously approved. We will want to tee up on the board agenda down the road. I'm not sure that's the next time, it may be the time after that, but soon, this summer, certainly, the rubric itself, so that we can have an opportunity to chew on that and provide feedback. So thank you very much. That brings us to the wage pilot and an update with respect to that.
Yeah,
So,
we're still on me.
yep.
So the wage pilot, just a very brief update. We did just close our second round of applications for the teacher bonus grants. We received 15 applications during the month of April. We approved 11 and are working on getting those teachers enrolled so they can begin receiving their payments. And in April, we also paid out 3 advancement bonuses for teachers who have had significant professional development advancement. We were very pleased with that, and teachers seem to be learning the process for getting the materials to us. We also had our first cohort event, which was held at Crowns to Computers at the end of April. We had 15 teachers attend and focused on trauma-informed teaching and got great feedback about that event. So that's where we are with the wage pilot.
Question.
Yes.
What was the most common factor for teachers not to get the grant? So you said 11 out of 15, the 4 people didn't incomplete application, or just?
It's sort of one from each reason, an incomplete application, somebody who just hasn't been employed long enough, so they'll be considered at a later date, and then somebody who's not full-time.
It's all process issues.
All process issues.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? And perhaps I'm jumping the gun here, but I know that later in the agenda, we're going to be taking up kind of an overview of the direction of the budget for the upcoming year, one item of which is the expansion of wage support. So will we have kind of information at that time that helps detail that a bit? So should we just kind of hold on that for later in the conversation?
We do. We have a one-pager inside the packet that speaks about the expansion, and I can put some numbers around that as well.
Great. All right. Well, let's hold on that then until we get to the discussion on the 1920 budget, if we would. Thank you. So, Flo, on tuition assistance, please.
Yay, it's my turn.
Yeah.
So currently, right now, we have 52 approved community providers with about 4 in the pipeline that we're working on. As you know, we're also trying to combine the application between QI and TA to make the transition a little bit more smooth. And what we found out is that a lot of the QI providers, they have to do the TA application again. So we are working to streamline that process. Currently for this upcoming year, we have 278 applications. Enrollment started on April 1st, with 177 being approved. 91 are new re-enrollments, and 86 of those applications are new applications. So very happy about that. Been doing a lot of community work, especially this week. Been involved with the Queens Village, which is something that Preschool Cincinnati works with. They go throughout the communities providing events for moms, and so I've been participating with them. We had an event on Saturday over at St. Bernard. They did a neighborhood Mother's Day event, which I was able to go over and use both of my abilities. I did some spoken word, but along with, I brought Preschool Promise information, was able to talk to the mothers about Preschool Promise. We're forming a really great partnership with Bethany House. So I was there Monday evening at the McHenry location. And so I'm scheduled to go to the Vaughn Hill location at the end of the month. And so today we decided that I would go there to one of their locations every other month so we can recruit some of the moms there and help them. Of course, we know that transportation is an issue, so I'm working with some of our community providers to have them go along with me so they can encourage the moms and so the moms can be comfortable with them. So we can encourage them to send their children to those community providers and to work with them. Cynthia's being one of the main ones. She really wants to get involved in that space. Tuesday, I was at the All Children Thrive Network doing a storyboard about Preschool Promise. Had the opportunity to meet with several different agencies who weren't aware of Preschool Promise and inform them about work that we're doing. So I was able to network with them. Wednesday, I completed Impact U, so I was able to work with them in that space. And somewhere, I'm sorry, my days are running together, I met with the Union Terminal, and we are planning a Promise Day, a provider Promise Day, in which we will open the Union Terminal, and we will have providers there, and they will be able to give out information to different members of the community about Preschool Promise, or about their centers with Preschool Promise being there.
You sleep from time
I
to
was gonna say,
time.
you're busy.
I do work now and then.
Yeah. Can you give us a sense for, first of all, excellent work. Thank you so much. Can you give us a sense as to how those numbers of people re-upping and so on, how that compares like a year ago at this time with, as you were beginning that effort?
Well, so our total number, and Hector, please help me out with this, because when I sat down, we have 306, I believe, returning 3-year-olds. However, I always give us somewhere between a 12 to 15% drop-off rate. My project for Impact U was to increase enrollment within the CPP footprint of CPS. What we worked on was simplifying the process. So my next movement from there would be to work on retention rate, because what we learned is that we had about 150 withdrawals from Cincinnati Preschool Promise. Now the question is, why did we have the withdrawal?
Right.
And so with that being said, between the withdrawals and between the returning 3-year-olds or the number of 3-year-olds, we estimated about 276 return of 3-year-olds. And in comparison to last year, Hector, what was the number?
I was like 225.
225 last year, so.
Good. Glad to hear of your experience with Impact U. The project is certainly the right project for you, isn't it?
It
So,
was.
good experience overall?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, very tiresome, but a good experience.
And you
Questions?
just graduated yesterday.
I just graduated yesterday.
Oh, seriously? Oh, there we go. So questions for Flo? You were done with your report. I didn't mean to cut you off if you weren't.
Oh, no, I'm done.
Good. So questions?
I just would echo the commendation of our diligence and our work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question. Flo, if you had like one wish to change one thing to help make this easier, what would it be?
Why would you throw that?
You can answer, you don't have to answer it today, but just to
let's
think
think
about, just thinking, if I think from our standpoint around what barriers exist and from what you're seeing on the ground is so valuable, and I think putting our energy to those barriers is what gets things done, so.
I'll think about it and get back to you.
The other,
I had another question.
sure, Christine.
It says we're entering the summer months. Are you fielding questions about summer care? Do we have sort of any process in place to help
Actually, I'm
give
not.
people resources towards summer care availability or other things that might be out there?
Yeah, actually, in comparison to last year, I'm actually not getting any calls with regards to some care.
Okay.
Hmm.
Well, I know it's not been
Oh,
part
sure.
of our
No,
mission.
absolutely.
I'm just interested if we can at least help provide some resource information about what might also be out there. I know I've heard anecdotally of like 1 or 2 preschool promise kids who were in it last year and then lost it over the summer and then didn't re-enroll. And so, you know, if we can keep them a part of the conversation as much as possible while not serving that need, I think would be beneficial for us.
Thank you. Quality improvement, QI. So, Brittany, you're on.
Oh, yes. Quick updates in terms of the number of participants that are in quality improvement. We now have 110. I think I'm a settle there for a little bit.
That was like, we were in the upper 90s a month ago.
98.
90, I thought 98 was the number that stuck in my head, thanks to Keisha. Yeah.
The breakdown of that is 26 centers, 77 family child care providers, and 7 parochial schools. In terms of new created quality seats, we are at 217 and still growing. So I have until June 30th to get my final count of new quality preschool seats created this program year.
My memory, correct me if I'm wrong, was that the goal was 200 seats?
According to the master agreement,
Yes,
the goal
right.
is 200.
Right.
Okay. Let's see, in terms of providers that we have serviced altogether in quality improvement, since year 1 is 125 providers. 12 of those providers have reached that high quality number that created that 217 new preschool seats. And I think that's it in terms of year-to-date updates. Any questions about those numbers?
We know, well, first of all, again, as with Flo, thank you for your great work. We know, have learned that the movement through the quality improvement pipeline is not necessarily linear or what proceeds at a kind of predictable, orderly pace. That said, do you have hopes for some of the providers in that overall pool kind of achieving a targeted star rating, you know, kind of sometime in the next 6 months or whatever the time would be?
I do have a forecast of providers and when they're projected to reach a high quality rating. I have been a little cautious
Yeah, sure.
of sharing that information just because things can change within 24 hours.
Right. Well, we won't hold you to anything,
Okay.
so.
I will say, when we talk budget, we have a forecast of seats being converted.
Yeah, so perhaps we can revisit the question at that point, because, and I'm sure that that's based on conservative assumptions, which are things that the Brittany can feel comfortable with, so. Good, thank you. Questions for Brittany?
Yeah, Brittany, how are we doing with kind of helping the programs overcome some of the barriers that they've encountered, like purchasing equipment, purchasing materials that they need to come up to quality?
I wouldn't say that was a barrier. It was a slow process, but I did receive some support. And I actually have a new system in place where coaches can actually input the orders right into the vendor's website, or I don't know what you want to call it, database, and it just shoots me a message saying, hey, you need to approve these items for this provider. Whereas before, the coaches would put the information on the spreadsheet, send it to me, I review it, and then I take that information and then input it into the database system. But now it's been streamlined, so I think providers will receive their materials and equipment a lot sooner than before.
Great.
Yeah.
When you say equipment includes playground equipment?
Not there yet, no.
Not there yet.
No.
You're
What do we need to
anticipating
get
further
there?
discussion, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else? Terry, thank you. Anybody else? Once again, thank you very much, Brittany. This brings us to the addition to the agenda that I referenced at the beginning. Debbie also wanted this coaching cohort, which is an item for our approval. Do you want to provide a little context
Yeah,
for
there
this?
is some background on the screen, and I asked Brittany to put this together for those of you who are not technically competent in knowing what coaching cohorts are. This is a great pathway. So Brittany, do you want to tee this up, please?
Sure. Last month in April, the QI work group met to discuss this hybrid coaching model. And this model is designed to provide technical assistance to the community child care providers wherever they may be on the subject quality spectrum. And basically to support them with accelerating to achieve a higher quality rate. This is done in the format of on-site visits with the actual providers, as well as group coaching sessions, and then some other professional development workshop that's built into this model. Currently, we are projecting that we will run about 3 cohorts at a time, and the maximum number of participants within these cohorts is 30. And the idea is to start this as soon as possible.
I think we've talked a lot about QI and jump-starting QI. I think Brittany and her team did a really good job before we had our last QI subgroup of generating potential ideas and concepts that would achieve that goal. And this is one, and as we talked as a subcommittee, we kind of, we said this is a good, this is a good thing. Discussions began in earnest with 4Cs, and I think 4C was asked to submit, more information around coaching cohort. They have experience with this, they piloted this, and they have demonstrated results. I think the thing that was missing in all that enthusiasm was the fact that we needed to develop a contract potentially for this. So I have a motion, and I'd like to read this to you, please, that gives us the ability, the QI subcommittee, to go back, look at this in a more formal way, and move it forward to the executive committee and the board in pretty short order. So it reads, Cincinnati Preschool Promise has the opportunity to accelerate quality improvement through the coaching cohort pilot with 4C for Children. By May 31st, the Quality Improvement Subcommittee should review a short-term retroactive contract between 4C and CPP for the period ending June 30th, 2019, with a recommendation being made on the terms of the contract, payment methods, and payment timeframes. A separate scope of work agreement from the basic one-on-one coaching contract. We already have a one-on-one coaching contract with 4C, was effective on July 1st, 2018. The recommendation is that the CPP Executive Committee be given the authority to approve a 4C CPP scope of work for cohort coaching at its June 4th meeting. And the implementation of this contract is time sensitive.
And if I might add some perspective from the Finance Committee's perspective on this, I think it's with a lot of things that we've done and implemented. And the reality is, a year plus ago, when the original statement of work for this body of work, where the one-on-one coaching was built, it really just focused on that. And the thing that I've been most impressed about seeing in this whole cohort model is how cost efficient it is to have the cohort model as opposed to just the one-on-one coaching. So I think from an efficiency standpoint, that's important, and I think this is an important way to kind of keep the work going because we are seeing progress from it.
Debbie, did you mention in there that work done prior to June 4th?
I said retroactive.
Retroactive.
And I think when we meet, we've got to, really explore what that time period is, where the, retroactive part of it would start. I just don't have that information right now, but I did say retroactive.
So you're asking,
I'm asking the board to delegate the authority to the executive committee to approve a scope of work for a coaching pool board contract.
So
the
in other words,
scope of work, not the contract amount. You're asking us to approve an amount, a scope and a contract amount?
Yes. None of that has been done for the coaching pool board.
so it isn't just a scope of work, it's the amount of dollars that would be needed to drive that, right? I think that's Vanessa's question.
Without it being discussed at the finance committee at all? When did it get discussed, the amount?
This hasn't been discussed,
It has not been
this came up
discussed.
after our last finance committee meeting.
When is the next scheduled finance committee meeting?
So like, we're just approving an amount of money that no one knows about, no one on the board knows
From what
about.
I understand, we're only giving the authority to the executive committee.
To approve a contract and amount, a scope of work and a contract amount,
Right.
without any discussion. That's what I
Yes,
hear.
that's essentially what I'm saying. A lot of work has been done, and the technical part of this is there have been discussions with 4Cs, to be very forthright, and this needs to put it in a legal contract.
Is there some reason why you can't share the work that's been done, the bullet points?
I don't have that, Vanessa. I don't have that. I mean, you're on the QI subcommittee.
I know, but we didn't discuss anything beyond, it's a great idea, and we haven't met for 2 to 3 months.
We met back in
April.
March.
I think-
April 11th.
Yes, so it's been,
If I could say Vanessa's point a different way, I'd be a little bit nervous about authorizing the executive committee to write a blank check, right?
that's how.
Yeah, exactly, and so I think what we want to do is put a safeguard in there such that there's at least the opportunity for the finance committee in some way, shape, form to review it, approve it before the executive committee.
And it happened back to back. So
Yeah,
our
absolutely.
finance committee is 2 p.m. on the 4th, and then I think your executive
That's
meeting
true.
is right after.
So we can review it in advance, Vanessa, and I hear what you're saying. I think the other part to note of this is that new contract with 4C needs to be drafted starting June, which would incorporate this. So I think it's kind of all in the same, and I think it's about the, per provider, what are we getting out of it? What's the value of it? And we can break it down from a financial standpoint to justify it. That's going to be part of the new contract, and then that would just be made retroactive to cover the previous work. So I think we can take that on based on the QI committee's recommendation, because I think it needs to start there,
So
right?
what I would be more comfortable with, because the QI committee, I think, is meeting May 30th, is that the QI committee would have some leverage on the scope.
Absolutely.
I mean, improving the scope. I heard everything delegated to the executive committee without any check.
Well, let me go back and say that the preface of this was that by May 31st, the QI committee should meet and review this.
I think we should be recommending a scope to the executive committee based on the work. And then that the finance committee should then be saying, understand the scope and what the range of I think by then we should be knowledgeable about what they're presenting as the contract amount for the scope and allow the executive committee to approve it. I mean, I understand that, but just to have it all done in the executive committee without us knowing anything.
I think we backed it up so that it gets to go through both committees in advance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Approval of
The
the
QI
scope, but
committee.
developing and the scope and approving the budget without anyone else understanding that, I think I'm not comfortable with that at all.
Totally understand. I think where this sits now is that we're fortunate to have the meeting sequenced in such a way that the QI group can see it, approve the scope of work, pass that on to the finance committee, which then passes it on to the executive committee.
Understand budget ramifications.
Exactly.
Of the scope of
Yes.
work.
So are
Christine?
you,
What are the current approval rates that have to come before the board, and are those, do we have documented what an executive committee could do?
the Hector can answer that, but I think the executive director can approve up to, is it $50,000?
$49,999.99.
And a contract.
Yeah.
And is that without board approval? Or
Yeah, without board approval, the executive director can approve up to that number, and thereafter, it's the board or any committee that is delegated the power by the board.
And that's based on state standards for treasurers in public school districts and public school. That $50,000 is a ceiling, and I think it was kind of modeled after that.
I mean, I think it's helpful context that we're talking about an amount larger than 50,000.
Yes, it seems that we are.
And that, do we have a sort of bookend on the other side? Are we talking, I mean, I'm assuming we're not talking about a multi-million-dollar contract. So I think giving some guidance of what that range is to the board might provide some comfort as well. But I also think making it clear that it's going to go through the three committees.
And I think that's fine. I think that, part of this is part of the transition that we're going through right now and discovery, if you will. And it's very important to get this cleaned up without better terminology. Don't film that. That's what we're doing right now. So, but we have to go through, and I agree with you, Vanessa, we have to go through the proper channels, and I accept what you're saying. I have no issue
With a level
with that.
of transparency.
I have no issue with that at all.
Yes, Michael?
Can I just propose amending Debbie's?
Yes, and I'll accept it.
Okay.
Whatever you say.
Then it will, after
Whatever you
review
say.
by the finance committee and the QI committee, then the executive committee will have the authority to do that.
Thank you.
The scope and the proposed contract amount.
Just adding exactly what you had, but adding that after review by the finance and the quality improvement committees.
Leslie? She has it.
Any further comments? Thank you very much for
Thank
getting
you.
that important
Thank you.
conversation going, Vanessa.
Well, I make the motion.
As amended by,
Amended by Michael.
I'll second the motion.
thank you very much, Christine. All those in favor, please, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed or abstaining?
Abstain.
Thank you very much, Terry. Noted. So on a motion made by Debbie Alsop and seconded by Christine Fisher, to approve the coaching cohort, the motion passed in the affirmative by all present except for Terry England. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Lots of committees going to be doing lots of work in the next couple of weeks, so that's a good thing. That brings us to community engagement. Lakisa, flying solo.
We will have community engagement on Tuesday, the 21st, at noon. The location will be given notice by Pastor Tate. I have been out in the community of Hartwell as well as Bond Hill within the last 2 weeks. The Billboard Commit campaign is still going on. We're actually putting another contract together to finish out the whole year. And then I'm waiting on another bid to do TV commercials for the Preschool Promise. Social media has actually increased by 300 people on Facebook, and I'm not really sure about on Instagram and Twitter. But there has been a larger increase with visibility of that for the social aspect of that. And that's it for me.
Questions for Brittany?
I'm Keisa today.
I'm scared.
It's okay.
Yeah, my bad.
That's
Question
okay.
for Father Graham. That's yeah, Vanessa.
Is the billboard by the same exact with the same exact locations, or is there the ability to change the location?
Well, that was with the first, with Norton's, those will just be where it is. Now I'm going to another company, Lamar, and I have to give them another location. And then he's gonna give me a bid between 5 to 10 a month that we can keep it and we can interchange it differently. There is the reason why I went with Lamar for this second part of the campaign is because they gave us a deal on 71. And it's just a generic one. It's just showing visibility that Cincinnati Preschool Promise is still available. The campaigns that are in the neighborhoods, that is what one just for the providers. So we want to focus overall on the 3 realms, which is just the overall with the Cincy, with the, website information, so it can be more accessible to get to, or by memory versus the phone number. And we can interchange them in the next 6 months, even though he's given it for 7 months, but it's really for 6 months payment.
When would those start?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Vanessa wasn't done yet, yeah.
So let me try to, so the billboard, when you sent out the email, you said you were doing a 1-month purchase.
That was the 1-month purchase under
billboards, and
Norton.
those were Norton.
That was Norton.
So are you finished with Norton after the 1 month?
Yes, ma'am.
So those will come down?
Those will come down. Now,
And
they
then-
did say if there's no one in that space, they can keep,
Right.
just I forgot the layer of what the terminology was, they can keep it there. But I'm working on another one for June to have something to roll out continuously for the rest of the year.
So can I make one recommendation
Mm-hmm.
on trying to making sure that they're coming? Like a couple of them that I noticed, like one was going on the way to Norwood, or on the way, so just the placement of them, and I haven't seen them all, but were any of them in Foggy Desert?
Yes, they were.
neighborhoods?
Yes, I actually worked with Brittany to get the placements that they were, but that's also what they have available too.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah,
Run a
so,
campaign,
I mean, they're pretty
costs,
much,
yeah.
with Lamar, I have to give them the areas in which you want to focus.
Gotcha.
And then they'll come back with me and let me know exactly what is available. I know one of the major ones that is more present is the one on Harrison and, Harrison going up the hill. It is going up north, the major intersection where they're doing the pipeline area. That's one area. Beekman is another one. Going down on State Avenue is one. So they're there.
They look
but it's
great,
just like there.
and I noticed them.
Thank
And
you.
it's very exciting.
Yeah.
What committee does this fall under?
Community engagement.
Will be the full marketing, because it might be worth having an additional discussion there, and I was gonna reference this as part of the budget, but not getting the weeds too much. So just quick, when are the highest months for enrollment? When do we enroll?
Well, we enroll all year round.
Right.
But Flo can answer that question, the specifics of it all.
Is it May, June, July,
So
August?
just looking at the data that we collected last year, it was April, it was around June, and then right as school start, that August to September one.
So this is really these few months here are really the most opportune time. And so, in terms of both, billboards and the rest of the marketing spend, I just want to make sure that we move pretty quickly, that we have enough invested. And I think it'd be worth that review. So, if you're looking at TV, for example, the total kind of monthly spend during those months, looking at the budget, is fairly limited. So, are you going to get the reach, and the repetition and things you want by investing in TV? If TV is the plan, that's great. Let's just make sure there's enough money to make sure it's really impactful. If it's, mail, billboards, whatever else we're doing. So I would just say it'd be good to get a quick look at that. And, as we're looking at budget, if we have any remaining budget, making sure we're putting that into the May, June spend, and then making sure we have enough allocated in July and August. So I think it sounds like you're doing a great job. You're doing the right things. Let's just make sure that it's enough.
And Lakisa, can I ask how you're attacking the social media space?
In regards to, so in regards to the social media, each of our components have a certain day that we promote certain things. And a lot of people don't realize that hashtags actually brings more awareness to whatever you're promoting, because it's the upper line of what is going on for that particular day. So the other part of it is who is seeing it in regards to who likes the page, number one, and then whoever likes the page and shares it, then they're individual. Now, if we pay for something like a campaign, like a boost campaign, that will get a little bit more of the demographics and the more awareness versus just the people that just like the page. But I don't use it on that unless it's something of importance. Like, say for instance, if we're highlighted on one of the local news stations, then I will go ahead and boost that particular campaign for that particular time.
Are you doing any formal paid advertising through social media?
No, that's what I'm talking about. If
Okay.
it's something like, I'm just saying, if it was a newsworthy story, then I would use a paid advertisement for that. That's something that is continual versus the things that we do, because it's just more so, like, I have books of the day. I don't think that needs to be paid for that type amount, because that's just something in general conversation. But once we start getting a little bit more visibility and more word of mouth, from my standpoint, when I'm out in the community, then I think we can go on a little bit more harder on that aspect.
And I may have some resources when you get to that point.
Yes,
because
ma'am.
I think when you think about billboards, it's fairly expensive, and when you get into the realm of social media,
It's
advertising,
extremely
it's
expensive.
incredibly well targeted, and there's so much data, pure
Mhm.
data analytics. And,
Right, it goes in the span of the 50-mile radius if you use social media. It goes on the demographics, your age, the people that, the category that you want to, that has preschoolers. It's a little bit more in-depth, for, as you say, versus that. But from me going into what I have seen, by me going into the communities and meeting with the groups, it's more so that people don't know, and they haven't seen it consistently about the preschool promise.
So one more question, I'm sorry, Vanessa. Does this fall under community engagement?
It does.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And they meet on the 21st,
Okay.
and I think, this is just me having run campaigns and gotten some expert advice from over here on one of them, that for what it takes to, so the community we're trying to target, that the billboards are the best bang for the buck. It'd be even better to increase the number of billboards in targeted areas, because you're getting traffic. It's like a repetitive thing, but what it takes to get a TV buy, it costs so much money, and especially you've got to look at, if we're trying to target June and then August and September, when you're going to start seeing some, especially in September, probably some campaign ads, and then you're competing. So we'd be competing probably with like the district or, on their, so I would recommend a good look on Tuesday at giving you resources to boost the campaign, because, on Facebook, like, I scroll but don't troll. That's my rule. And so I know.
We're glad to know that.
Yeah, every now and again I get a little excited, but you see people. I notice what you're doing, and I know it's been a long time coming, but because I'm on Facebook, probably not all of us are, but I noticed the social media footprint, and it's even cheaper to do the boost. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure if you're still using them as the social media, but because we're a nonprofit, I think the rates are better for a nonprofit. Yeah.
For which part? I'm sorry.
Social media boost, if that.
I haven't looked into it because I haven't had the story. But I mean, they even give us a nonprofit for billboards too.
Right, it's all cheaper for nonprofits.
Yeah.
So those things that get constant play and constant ability to play, especially when you're talking about families and parents on there constantly. If you're on there, you could get like 10 people to share. Like you can get a campaign and you can say, I need 10 people to share or whatever.
If that
People will do that.
If that committee, I think it's worth talking about, both the plan and the resources needed. And I think, Vanessa, you're right. In mentioned, Cheryl, I mean, it's billboards, it's digital, which can be, highly targeted, and mail, which can be targeted. And, we should look at both, enrollment this year. There's certain target areas, we talked about executive committee, target areas, target populations we want to get to, make sure we're getting enrolled. So let's make sure that's happening. We have the data on where we have under enrollment right now, where there's seats available. So, those areas, those neighborhoods, I would think would be ripe, and you can make adjustments, right, as we're seeing enrollment and where there's vacancies, we should be able to then go in and target, digital media. Billboards would take a little more time, but certainly digital media, you can target in where we're saying, hey, look, we're 90% enrolled in these neighborhoods, but there's quality providers that are only 40% enrolled in these areas, so let's target some of those areas to make sure, we're ramping it up, and then just make sure we have the budget to do it.
I had mentioned before about talking to Crystal Hendricks.
I haven't had a personal meeting. I did meet with her the day after we had that meeting. I did see her.
She's an expert about billboards and give you data. I told you, we're doing a big deal with her on smoking in the African American community, and she had some unique, as I brought before, comments about how to position them. And oftentimes we have them in the wrong direction.
Right, and she did specify with the billboards, for the people that are trying to enroll, the billboards are not really for them. It's finding that unique way to actually get those that are trying to enroll. And I did speak to her about it, but as far as general knowledge, they are in the neighborhoods in which we were. It's just finding that open space that is available.
And the buzz is back. So
yes, we already are on the radio. We are on the radio. We are on the bus. In the bus. We also, I think I got all of the media. So
my takeaway from all this is that there's great enthusiasm for the work that you're doing, Keisha. We've got this meeting coming up next week. We've got sort of internal spending authority up to $49,999,999, and so and then past that, the board meets again next month, and so there's incremental dollars that internally we believe should be allocated towards this. I think we should go for it. So good conversation. So there really should be some kind of a recommendation coming out of this for incremental media spend in targeted ways in the course of the next couple of weeks that we can then look at. Hector, take a look at the funds available to us at this time of the year and see what we can do about helping you do more work.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you. Thank you. Other takeaways? Yes.
We've done this for some of the other subcommittees, but I think it would be great to do a deeper dive. Kisa's been here a little bit longer at maybe our next board meeting, really on community engagement and marketing, and just have that more thorough discussion.
Good, good. You up for it?
Yeah, and also I'm working on finding a contractor for the annual report as well. I forgot about that. Because that has to be, we have to go deep on that, on the annual report, just from emails that I've received from the community, as well as from just being out with organizations about specifics of it. So
good.
That's all.
You said you had to find a vendor to do that?
Yes, sir, because I reached out to Dayton, and she gave me some ideas. I also looked at the for Cleve. For that, I did want to reach out to they're called strategic communication list or something like that. And she said they're a little bit more expensive, and we want to find somebody that deals in the educational realm to really give us the information that will help support Preschool Promise with data. So that's the reason why. And you need graphic designers, writers, things of that nature, and whoever.
I hope we're reaching out to minority companies, we can track our minority spend.
Oh, yes, sir. And I have been using minority. In fact, our website, a web designer is a minority business owner.
What's your time frame for making that decision, Lisa?
I'm sorry.
What's your time frame for making that decision?
A month.
Okay, yeah. What I was wondering.
Because our numbers, there's some things that we can start now.
Yeah.
So we're not waiting to the last minute for when we have the large board member in August. But I'd rather start on it now, at least working on those people that we can contact so we can at least determine how many numbers of pages that we want to have. Do we want it electronic? Do we want to get the book? Things of that. There's little details like that.
So I think, so the template that Mary left is not robust enough, is that what you're saying?
That, I think because it only was the first year,
Okay.
I think people are now wanting to really know about the data about kindergarten readiness because this is our second year. Really more so about where the funds are flowing and things of that nature. So it's about telling the story effectively and efficiently and clearly that is also layman's terms versus in the language that we all speak, and that's Cincinnati preschool programs. Yes, ma'am.
If I'm not mistaken, I think August is what's set forth in the master.
It's in the
agreement.
master agreement.
But it has to be written, and it's supposed to be out in August.
Did you have something you wanted to?
Yeah, I was just reflecting. I think a very important part of data this year is the evaluation, the first year evaluation. I'm not sure on when that rollout is, but some of us attended a deep dive meeting back in February with Ohio State, and so I would be very interested in a very robust update on where the training center evaluation stands, CPS's rollout of the KRA data, because it's in, and I think it's very timely that we can also get some kind of summary in our first in this report, this annual report.
Do we have our scores yet? I can speak to that a little bit. So we do, and Crane has all that data and is working on the report, and they have a draft of the executive report. We are coordinating with CPS to make sure that we are reporting our data in a similar way and that it's consistent. So it's not ready for daylight yet, but it is pretty far along in the process.
How far along is it on?
There are a couple of levels of analysis that still need to be done where we're actually comparing like students at CPS to the CPP students. So that's another level that I think is going to take a little while. In terms of just sort of like descriptive statistics, that level is done, and some of the build out of the actual report format is done. I think initially Shiloh was thinking that they may shoot for June to report to the board, to come to the board. I think that is seeming ambitious, but we will know more when we have our transition and then can set a new plan.
Let's see where we are then.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's move on, please, to the finance and audit report. So tee up the two of you, Cheryl and Hector.
Good. We have two items of information today and one item for discussion that's quite important. We'll start with Form 990, which has been completed.
Yes.
I believe the whole board did have an opportunity to review that. We had a very robust discussion and valuable discussion in our finance committee meeting. Just to frame our thinking on this, Form 990, of course, has a lot of disclosures and reporting, financial reporting that the IRS requires, but as we were evaluating it, that form didn't necessarily carry the level of transparency and information disclosure that we felt was important. And so many of us worked to try to help make sure that in the Schedule O, right, where we could actually add comments, we were much more extensive in that. And I think that is along the lines of keys to what you're seeing on the request for the annual report. More information is better, and providing context around each of these items is better. So I know Hector's glad to be done with that, signed, sealed, delivered, and that will be posted on the site.
As soon as the site gets transitioned to the new site, then we will post the information. That's in process right now. It doesn't make sense to, I think, take effort away from Lakeisha's work.
We'll just say to anyone who would like an advance copy of that 990 as it was filed, please reach out to myself or Hector, and we'll make sure that you get a copy of that. We're happy to share. The second item is the financial results to date, and then after that, I'm just going to tee this up for Hector, and I'm sure we'll go right into the discussion about the 2020 budget, which is important, as our work evolves. How we're allocating the public dollars that we have to maximize the benefits is really important. And I know that there's been a lot of work that's gone on around these recommendations, but I think today our discussion around this point is important because as a board, I have to say, and I think what I've seen as we have evolved our work together, the more aligned in agreement we have around the budget for the year and that OSGM, the better and I think more success we're going to be able to have in accomplishing all of those objectives. So with that, I'll turn to Hector for the review and then also the review of the proposed budget, and then we can have some discussion.
And if you can flip back 2 pages, okay. There, thank you. So these are the results year-to-date to March 31st. And because I want to spend a considerable amount in the budget and help you understand some of the strategic choices that you have, I'm just going to ask you to focus on the lower right-hand corner, where it basically tells you what the underspend is. So if you look at the budget year-to-date minus actuals year-to-date column, which is the far right, and you look at the bottom of that column, you'll see that roughly on the CPP side only, there are about $2 million of underspend, of which roughly 800,000 is in tuition assistance and the same in quality improvement. And I just want you to keep that number in mind. I don't want to enter into the discussion of this as we can avoid it, because I think there's a lot of meat in the budget that we need to get to. If we can flip to the next one, then in this one, because we just talked numbers, I've provided numbers again. I've used colors here to indicate where there's an increase in the fiscal year 20 budget versus whatever's being compared to. So this is a very interesting document for me, because if you look at the fiscal year, the far right column, and then you look one to the left, you'll see that the fiscal year 20 budget minus the fiscal year 19 budget, if I just subtract those two and look at the total line at the bottom, there's only a $53,000 increase between one budget and the other. And I'll get to explain that in a moment. If you look at the right column, though, which would be the fiscal year 20 budget minus our current forecast for this year, for the full year, there's actually about a $3 million increase in spend. So we have this interesting characteristic, and for those board members who weren't here last year, I'll explain. We built the budget last year believing that quality improvement seats would flip from the beginning of the year. We knew that would not happen, but we wanted to be covered. We didn't understand when it would happen because we didn't have enough data. So about roughly 100 and some seats were already budgeted. We did not spend that money. So every month, we've been running this underspend in tuition assistance. The same thing in quality improvement. We assume very aggressive ability to spend from the beginning, which didn't come true because we had transition, we needed to get new plans in place, etc. So our current fiscal year has a significant underspend. For the new year, the budget is a lot tighter. We did not go in, and you'll see that as we move through the next few slides, and say we're going to get all of the quality improvement seats to flip from the beginning of the year. We have more information about what number of seats flip. Simply because a center becomes quality rated doesn't mean every student in that center becomes a tuition assistance eligible. So we're better able to estimate compared to last year. So if we can flip to the next one, the budget is built to reduce underspend. So unlike last year, where we were very aggressive on our ability to spend, we're trying to be a lot more realistic. And this goes back to the significant, continuous drumbeat of why underspend is bad. So we tried to explain how we build the budget, but we still got dinged for underspend every month. So we've tried to develop a much more close to actuals budget than what we did last year. That does mean we may be overspent at some point, and we may need at some point. Now, I'll explain a little area in a moment, that counters that argument, but it is much tighter budget than it is this year. I would be very sad if we ended up with another $3 million underspend or even close to that number. Next, the strategic options for you, if you go back for a second. The strategic options for you, or the discussion items for you, are: do we want to expand TA coverage to 250 to 300% of FPM? Currently, we go from 0 to 250% of FPM. That's where we are in this fiscal year. So that's one question. Another question, if you go down to the bottom, is expansion of wage supports from the 0 to 2-star providers. So do we want, currently we have teacher promise grants and teacher assistance achievement bonuses that help 3, 4, and 5-star centers. Do we want to expand a type of support, like those are, to the 0 to 2-star? And I've worked it into the budget. I'll explain those numbers for you. But those are two large strategic questions. Already decided, basically, is we have to spend on outdoor equipment. It is part of quality improvement, and we've included a one-pager on each of these 3 items in your packet, which it has a lot more detail for you, and if you have questions, please come back to us subsequently. It's too much to discuss right now, but one of the tools that we use to measure, well, that's used generally to measure achievement by the programs, has in it a description of outdoor equipment as one of the key aspects that we need to, where we need to spend in order for children to develop their motor skills, etc. We've included that in your packet. And there's also technology. So those are new spending areas for you in the upcoming year. If we can flip to the next one, I'll discuss a little bit each of these.
Okay, let me know when you can take questions, because I'm holding in a lot.
Okay, so let's do it now, because the next 3 slides are going to explain some of those arrows. Right. And maybe I say hold off on that one, maybe it's not in there, and I need to follow.
You said hold off 7 times, I'm thinking, okay, I'm holding off, but I think we're advancing slides, and my retention is not as good as yours.
I'll wait right now.
So go ahead. First of all, great job on the Form 990, both to you and Cheryl and the Finance Committee. I've lived my life in 990. It's a very well done document.
Thank you.
On the budget, a few questions. You said we get dinged if we're under budget. Who dings you?
The community comes out, speaks about we should be spending it, why are you hoarding it, those type of misunderstandings that happen when there's a lot of
official ding, but it's criticism or
criticism for CPP in the community.
I got it.
There's a way, Yusuf, in which a better way of thinking about reducing underspend would be aligning the budget with actual need and then making strategic investments with money that we have available.
So actually, you stole my second point. Probably grammar is great. So if we are under budget, those line items that you showed 3 slides ago, are we limited from a budget perspective to those line items? So
no, a budget is simply a tool for planning.
So we have leeway.
So for example, if Lakisa needed to buy 7,000 billboards,
you could do that.
And we had money in another area that that we reasonably believe would not be used, we could move that money for Lakisa to spend 7,000 billboards. That's within the power of our organization.
So, I don't think to say that the community is dinging the preschool promise. That's not what I think has happened. So I don't want that to be like a negative thing that the community hears from this board. Is feeling like, so there was a lot of effort over the 3 to 4 years to raise this money, and there was a budget that was put in place, and there were issues organizationally. Have been issues, all kinds of issues, and then there are also providers who haven't understood. Why can't you pay for playground? So it's been an evolution, and not necessarily, people have been dinged for their understanding of what they thought they passed. in terms of making sure providers got to quality because we said how important this was. And then the ding has been the lack of transparency. And I think we've made a lot of effort, we need to continue to make a lot of effort because these are public dollars, is to be very clear about spending and why and communicating. So I don't think we've communicated enough in a very clear way of why things were taking so long or why. And the providers have been the ones who have, I think you heard Terry's question about, you know, what progress have we made as a provider who understands the space of what it takes to get to a 5-star, which she
And I also
is.
appreciate Hector's
Yeah.
prefatory comment that every year we're getting better.
Right, and that's why I said I don't think it's good for the community to hear that they have deemed us. I think they questioned, and it's a right to question. The Cincinnati Public School Board is on the chopping block every week because of public money, and it's just about accountability
Sure.
that the community deserves for the great gift that they've given
Sure.
us to be able to do this work.
Absolutely.
I'm going to note that we have 10 minutes more for this presentation.
Yeah.
One last quick question. Cool. So on the previous slide, what is, when you ask for strategic considerations, what's the incremental impact on the budget?
So you're about to see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we flip to the next one, what I've done here is I've taken and marked the strategic option, just like I used the yellow arrow before, I'm using it here. This is a pie chart explanation of the spending in tuition assistance for the fiscal year 20 budget. On the left, you have what enrollment, it's using the same color scheme, what number of students correspond to that dollar spent. And above, you have the enrollment for the fiscal year 20 compared to the current enrollment for fiscal year 19. For those of you who remember from last year, the gap in that upper left-hand column, chart, between the high side enrollment and the base enrollment was very large. And in the chart below, the number of students in the categories was very large. Now, we are saying, no, those above the base enrollment, those are smaller categories now that we have more information, as opposed to the 150, for example, that used to take the place of the 50 in there.
We budgeted conservatively, hopefully, because we didn't know who was going to show up. Now we have that data.
Yes. So that's tuition assistance. Next one is quality improvement. And here, again, the arrows correspond to the first slide. So you have the spending pie on the right for coaching, for learning environment, for outdoor learning space, and so on. Now, unlike the first slide, there's no corresponding color coordination, so that's why I've made the colors be off, so that you don't try to tie the charts to the left to the pie chart. On the left side, on the lower part, you'll see the programs enrolled, our forecast of the number of programs that would be enrolled and actively spending. Just because they are enrolled doesn't mean we've gone through the process of evaluating them and actively spending. As you see in the first quarter, it's about a 50-50 split, and then we move to actively spending for the rest of the year, basically for the vast majority. And we enroll a few, but it's still basically just spending to improve their quality. If you look at the slight green slide, and which is difficult to see here, but it's in your packet, those are the number we expect to have graduated to high quality during the year. So in quarter 2, we expect 6. In quarter 3, we would expect 5 more. In quarter 4, we'd expect 12. Because we get asked not only the number of programs, but we get asked the number of seats, in the upper left, I provided a forecast of the number of seats converted to high quality. So the line is a cumulative. The colors and the bars are the type of provider. So you'll see that we have 12 seats in a type A in quarter 2, but we have 102 seats in a center in quarter 4. Next slide, please.
Just on this one. The new items are new for the budget. If a center wanted to do playground equipment or technology right now,
We have some
You would
steps in the
approve
purchase, yeah, we have some
that
steps in the
now.
purchasing process that we still haven't followed.
Right.
But once, yes, we would not turn it away,
Okay, I just
especially
wanted
given
to-
the significant underspend we have.
Right, clarify that we have money now, and if anyone wants those funding now, I wouldn't see us saying wait till next
Yeah,
year.
and I will tell you more. Brittany has a significant backlog, and we just need to go through the purchasing process.
Okay.
That's all. Okay, next one is cost of quality, and here's one of the key items, and it's very large. It's that wage grant for 0 to 2-star step up to quality. This program has not been fully developed yet. So this is simply a placeholder that says $3,000 times 250 teachers. We are not sure whether that's where it will end up. We think that number is high. So remember when I said this is a tighter budget, but there's one caveat? This is the caveat. Because as this gets more developed, and Lauren can speak to that, or Gary can speak to that, we might want to carve some of that money and put it in a contingency. And say, you know what, wherever the issue pops up, we have this contingency fund to go address it. Or wherever we find a need that we no longer need the contingency, maybe we want to focus on the 7,000 billboards or whatever happens to be the case. But in here, you'll see what we forecast for Teacher Promise Grant on the right, and then on the left, it is corresponding, so I'm using the same color. How many teachers is that? So we think it'll be 127 teachers receiving support in the first quarter, 167 in the second, and so on down the line. The teacher advancement bonuses, which have a very small pie, are 101 teachers, but those come interspersed throughout the year. So there's really no quarter to place them in. So those are our big 3 large programs, and the strategic questions, do you want to focus on the wage grant? Do you want to do 250 to 300? Do you want to do both? Because there's some discussion that needs to be had about how much coverage do we have from the 0 to 200% of FPL. So to address that concern that came up in one of our committees, if you can flip to the next one, I'm going to remind the board about this presentation we had back in January, which was a quick look at the lifetime levy revenue and spending forecast we had back then. And I just want to focus on the green area that says reserve unallocated. Those $2.4 million were dollars that had no place, meaning remained unallocated at the end of the levy, even after we did some things that are detailed in the next page, which included paying for the last semester of our funding, right? Because our funding ends up in the calendar year. We have 6 months after that still to fund. But the key here is this is 2.4 when, if you look on the left, light gray, that was 1.7 or underspent for this year. Now that we're around a $3 million underspend for this year, we would have another 1.3. So we would get to 3.7 at the end of the levy. Again, lots of assumptions because it goes across the years. I've tried to put those assumptions on the next sheet. But if we had growth at some moment in the 0 to 200% area that wasn't part of our budget, we could tap this 3.7. Now, that money would sit at CPS, right? So we need to ask for the transfer and so on. It doesn't sit in our bank accounts. But it's available to us to help mitigate an issue that might come up. In addition, if you look at the sheet that I included for TA, there's the one-pager explaining, there's the potential to cap the TA spend on the 250 to 300 to just the 30 students or 40 students that we see there. Or we could cap it to just 4-year-olds. We could do many things to prevent that number from growing exponentially and swallowing up the 0 to 200. So when we met in committee and I told you I would bring some items to help alleviate your concern, these were the items that I was talking about. If you can flip to the next ones, just so that's the key assumptions behind the spend that you saw on the previous slide. Next one, please. And then this is again, the year to date. So you've already seen this previously, it's just two presentations getting together. Whew, okay. So here's as I try to bring it to you is, if you expand 250 to 300, the district will expand 250 to 300. We work together. We don't have to, but we have because we find it doesn't create noise for parents. Parents know whichever one I go to, I can have TA. But this is the type of budget that leads when you have that expansion. Go ahead, yes.
Okay, I have 3 questions.
Yes.
The first one goes back to the contract that Deb was talking about.
Sure.
How does that, because we don't know how much that is, what is that going to affect any of this proposal?
So I'll have to wait and see what comes out when they analyze it. But here's the thing. I have a budget for one-on-one coaching that was 500-some thousand. If that's cheaper, because the reason they're picking it is because it's cheaper to do in group versus one-on-one.
I thought they're choosing it in supplement with.
Yeah, they're
It's
two different
supplemented.
things.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
they're two different things, they're not something.
Okay. Well, then that would be.
It's more efficient. More efficient.
Right, I agree, but I thought it was a supplement, that's the way I heard it.
Yeah.
Just based on the
Supplement.
initial contract. Because what we learned was,
Right.
we can do this in,
Right.
Mercy can do this in
So-
group and.
At first, it's gonna be, but still.
Yeah, so it
That's
could
my
be
number one.
incremental, yes.
My second one was, I'm not noticing our cost of quality, our workforce development budget in there.
That's true. This is a CPP side only, and only because I've reached out to Jan and yours is not finished. Not yours in particular, but the
Right.
CPS budget is not
Right,
finished.
okay.
So I'm waiting for that data so I can put them together, because I know that we
Right.
receive around 15 million a year, and I don't want
It's
to
100.
go above that. Yeah.
Okay, so, and the other question came from the question about the playground. Now, but that, I guess that'll go back from when we get this. Those people who want playgrounds are only quality improvement people, they aren't tuition assistance people.
Correct. So
Okay.
that's in the QI
That's right.
budget.
That was all I
Absolutely.
just wanted that cleared up.
Yes, thank you for clearing that up.
So those were my 2 questions.
Can I ask a question? What are the expectations of us in the next minute as a board?
That you decide everything and that I don't have to come back next time. No.
So I think, and to wrap this up, if this would be something for a very robust discussion, but I think what Hector's attempted to do here is to demonstrate the levers of opportunity that we have to pull and put money towards to drive successful outcomes for this program. So we would very much welcome your feedback along those lines. I would welcome all of you to come to the next Finance Committee meeting, where I expect this is going to be a big portion of the agenda. And I think with that, we would be able to come back to the board with our recommendation.
That is the plan. The plan is to go to finance, follow up to executive, which is right after, and then come back to the board with the final recommendation for the board.
I know, go ahead.
So there's something that is not represented here that has had some level of conversation that I think deserves to be in here, which is the conversation. So it's the 250 to 300 is in here, but there's also been some conversation about going to look at what Dayton does. Dayton provides, allows children some help in the 1 and 2 space as well. I don't see that projected as an opportunity here, which I think is definitely an opportunity to stick with the mission of serving more children who are in that lower poverty rate, especially because we have some very clear numbers around those children will be moving into the 3, 4, and 5. We projected that. I think the other thing that I would say is the conversation about the working group. I think it might be on the 28th. I think that some of this stuff needs to be netted out, especially if there's going to be any recommended changes to the master agreement. Are there any implications for that? So I think we need to make sure we have everything on the table as key points to consider. and some to make sure we have clear projections on what that would look like as well. So say we stay 250 and under and included children who are in 1 or 2, and some prorated, just like we do for, 70 or 60 or 50, what would that look like in terms of students? So that's another opportunity.
And just in terms of process, that, the piece that I heard Missy was that a lot of these have to be in conjunction with CPS decisions. And so in particular on this, we've got to figure out the timeline of how to engage on those discussions with them.
We have a meeting, I think that was my point, June 12th or something.
But, yeah, we
this
have to,
conversation.
like, this in particular has to be before CPP can kind of decide we're going to go to 250. I just feel like that's a conversation we
Or
really
go to
have
300.
We're good at 300. But, yeah, but I think we talked about it at our other kind of meeting in conjunction with CPS, that this board ultimately has the ability to make that decision. And I think, generally speaking, we probably need to move quickly on this, because the concern that I think I've expressed last year and at other board meetings is that we end up, not making these decisions in advance. We don't do it in early enough in the initial enrollment period, and then we go back and we start changing it in the middle of the year, and then we had talked about going to 300% in January, and that never happened. And so we really, I think, need to make these decisions soon, and even if we're doing it at the next board meeting, if you think about, we just talked about marketing and enrollment, and April, May, June being prime time to do that, are we telling parents right now that it's up to 300, or are we not telling them it's up to 300? And so, I think directionally we need to be moving quickly. I don't know that we can even wait till the next board meeting. And as Hector's pointed out, it's a minimal amount. What's the, for a family of 4, what's 250% of poverty? Is that around 60,000?
Basically.
And so for a family of
60,000.
So like if you get a single mom with 2 kids, you're talking $50,000.
But
So
it's a minimal amount on the CPP side. First of all, I don't know if it's a foregone conclusion that just because CPP does it, that the district does it, if they're choosing not to do it, because I think there's reasons why they've chosen not to go to that level for their students. I don't think that's a foregone conclusion, but I also think you have to look at the whole pot, because you're gonna draw that down off the 3.7 million, right? Which we go there, we go there.
Again, this was broadly discussed as being made available on a sliding scale to everybody in the community with a prioritization around lower income students. And so, again, we're talking about, moving it to, if you moved up to 300%, you're talking about, then you're impacting 78%, according to Hector's chart, 78% of the 3 and 4-year-olds. And you're talking about, if you have at 250% of poverty, a parent with 1 child is about 40K. We just said, a single parent with 2 kids is 50K. What's the cost of quality preschool? We're talking to that parent with 2 kids is $20,000 on a $50,000 salary. I'm just having trouble, like, why aren't we enrolling these kids? Why are we putting these limits on it? We have the money and tuition assistance. The 2 tenets of this were tuition assistance and high quality. So before we ever are talking about, which I think the reason we haven't gone to the 1 and 2 stars is because that's an example of CPS saying no. And I think, that would be a big move away from the fundamental tenets of what Preschool Promise was about. So, we should be enrolling these kids that may not have access to quality preschool right now. We're not talking about high income. We're talking about, also we're talking about people that aren't getting state assistance, right? This is a group that's not getting money from anywhere else. So we need to get these kids enrolled. We need to be pushing on this. We need to make sure there's quality. And so I think your discussion's right about the 1 and 2 star. I just think that that's a longer term discussion, and the data that we've looked at before shows that it's not as effective if we're not in high quality. So, but the one thing we can do is we can really push this kind of both the marketing effort, the outreach, to get more kids enrolled, and we can at least set the limit at 300% where we're capturing a larger section of these 3 and 4-year-olds. So that would be mine.
Other comments? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd go to 300% immediately. I don't know why we waited. I think to expand it to that, it's not these are families that can use the assistance and things. So I'm all for that. I also want to, I think we got to discuss the bigger picture here, or the bigger number line. There's the 750,000 for the cost of quality. And I think we have to be very careful how we spend that money. That's a big number. And that has to be tied to quality. We have to make sure that is achieved as a goal of raising quality.
Yeah, there's something that's intuitively appealing about this, about that part of the initiative, because we've heard repeatedly from providers that hanging on to good people is just one of the things that gets in the way of their achieving quality. So I really applaud the effort to try something in that space to see what will work. And to your point, what we're going to need to do is monitor, so to speak, the ROI on it. But to do nothing, I think, shows a kind of indifference to what we know is are the facts out there. So
I think what we talk about at executive committee is recognizing that 750 really is a very unlikely number that we're going to get.
Right.
I mean, that would be, that would just be having a blanket program where everybody, it's not tied to quality improvement, it's not tied to getting improved credentialing, it's not improved to specific retention, efforts. So I think it's unlikely to be that number. We'll discuss that more in committee.
Vanessa.
So this is just, it's a technicality and a way to think about the reason that we grandfathered the new unrated centers that CPS established that were new was because they have the capacity. We did the same with the Archdiocese, was because they have the capacity to get to quality quickly, because they have qualified teachers, they pay good salaries. That's why we grandfathered them in. And so even though we made assumptions that they would get to quality, and so we gave them that levity, which we didn't give ourselves in the process by making the assumption that we would help the ones and twos, the quality rated, not high quality rated, because it's all about a rating. We didn't allow space, and then we had money to do some of that stuff in the first year, but didn't because we were cautious starting out. But I just wanted to, as we move forward in a space where we want to get centers to quality faster, that we allow that kind of framework, a different kind of group of providers, but allow that same kind of assumption that if we're investing in them on all these things that we now have in place, that they'll get to quality quicker, and we can make some assumptions that they'll get there, which we did with the district.
Let me back up from the conversation. These have been good comments. So as we've observed already, we've got the finance committee coming up right before the executive committee. A budget is a strategic tool, right? It reflects kind of what it is that the organization seeks to do. What I would really urge the finance committee to do is to back up and say, what are the strategic objectives we want to achieve next year in terms of more kids in seats, more people in the quality pipeline, and so on, against the background of what we now know. Right? And then, what's the budget look like that's got to achieve those goals, right? And so Hector's provided us with a lot of what the Legos, so to speak, of the system, and now what we need to do is figure out, well, now what is it that we exactly want to build? So he's laid out these various options, what the implication of doing them all together would be. I also want to note that a robust part of the conversation that we had in the executive committee, Pastor Tate led this, was that suppose that our community engagement, marketing efforts, and so on were very successful and actually drove more people into the tuition assistance space than we're currently seeing now. So we would want to make sure, first of all, we want to do that, and what are the mechanisms available to us to be able to do that? What's the budget implications of that? And then what does that say about other tuition assistance expansion like 250 to 3? I think where we were was that ultimately by the end of the conversation was that we were good with the 250 to 300 expansion, but we also wanted to see significant effort to engage more deeply the populations to whom we feel most committed, so as to enhance the take-up rate there, and that the budget needs to be sculpted you know, in ways that achieve that through, as we were saying earlier, the marketing dollars, community engagement dollars.
I would think, Father Graham, instead of, that's a great point, and instead of maybe looking at having to limit any group, like we just make sure there's enough additional money, or, you know, there's a line item in the budget that if we go over, we have additional revenue, you know, room for tuition assistance. I think that would be.
We need to bake in some flexibility here.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
so how does that sound as a kind of charge to the finance committee? And then what can happen is, that'll get processed by the executive committee. We will look forward to bringing to you middle of next month, kind of a budget plan. But as I said, you know, that the top sheet on the budget plan that I want to see is, here are the things we want to accomplish next year, and then there's the numbers, you know? So I think we need to make sure we're very clear on the budget as strategic tool, I think.
Can I just ask this, so guidance to staff and enrollment and understanding, like, so we have a mom that's making $42,000 that wants to enroll her child in a quality preschool, and she comes and puts in an application, and she's over the 250, are we enrolling her, or are we not enrolling her? And I don't want to create uncertainty, I think, from a staff perspective. Like, we need to make sure that, and last time when we went through this, we did enroll, and then we basically, it never happened. So I'd rather be erring on the side of let's enroll them and not turn away.
I think that what we've heard is that, for those who have spoken, that expanding 250 to 300 sounds like a good idea, right? But that then there's other things we want to make sure that we do at the same time. So at this point, I want to say, Finance Committee, got your marching orders, and we'll look forward to seeing what it is that you come up with to recommend to the Executive Committee, which will bring it to the full board.
As long as it's timely to catch enrollment, right? I mean, enrollment is
Right,
happening
yeah.
as we go, so we need to make the, you know. as
Right.
long as
We just said
get
April,
that-
May, June, or like big enrollment.
Agreed, but we're not going to approve something that we can't sustain in the budget.
Yeah, well,
So-
We never not accept the applications. We can accept applications.
But approve. I mean, that's.
Yeah,
But not
right,
approve, because they were sitting there before. But I think there was, I think you keep doing what you were doing, by the end of the month, there'll be a decision. You guys need you?
You might as well board meet again.
No, I
Meets
thought,
on the 13th.
I thought y'all were saying the executive committee, we're gonna do the same similar thing we did with the motion, that it goes through finance and into the executive committee with some.
I hadn't anticipated that, but if you would be, if you think that you'd like to move that, I'd certainly be open to that. That is to say, that the board would charge the executive committee with making this final decision on the budget,
On the.
On the floor.
250 to 300.
Just on that aspect.
Just on that aspect.
Just on that aspect.
That's, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, just practically, what happens, is someone, are we approving enrollments now, or just taking applications? I mean, do we actually approve?
We're approving applications right now.
And so if someone comes in and they're at 260% of poverty, what are we telling them now?
We would say that they don't meet qualifications, because our qualifications go up to 250.
And then we drive people away and they enroll in a non-quality preschool. I think it's just a mistake.
Well, the letter would also state that we're looking into it, and should happen to change, that we would know.
I just think people move on and make decisions, they enroll somewhere else, because if they're active now doing this, we just need to move it along. I
We're
just think it's a
projecting it's
mistake.
$100,000, is that right, for a year?
Correct.
That's
I mean,
$100,000.
Is this
projected.
something we can vote on today?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm wondering, yes.
I mean, it's nothing.
I think
mean,
everyone's
in the-
nodding, so I
I would ask, just like we're using the same energy to talk about 250 to 300%, we didn't use the same energy to talk about 200% and lower. Again, everything that we're doing now, because those families that can't afford it, they're going somewhere. We're providing a relief for them, but there are so many other students who are not going anywhere, and we haven't reached them. There are so many families that fall between 100 to 250 that we haven't dug deep enough into our community to really put the energy behind going to find them and reach them. A lot of them are not in any center.
And actually, that's what we talked about earlier, is like really ramping it up, focused
But
on
are
it.
they in these projections? I think
They're
that's
not in
the
these
question.
projections.
Well, that's what we would look for. You have a community
That's the
engagement
concerns.
meeting next
Yeah.
week, and I think what we would very much welcome is what you perceive to be coming out of the hospital.
We need to
That's
put that money in the
precisely-
budget too. We agree. I think it's important. We need to market, advertise, push it, put the money in the budget. But it's not a reason to prevent.
And that's all I was saying.
I don't disagree. Yeah, I don't disagree. I think
That's all I
the
was
move is
saying.
good. I just want to make sure.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
Is that this is not a complete picture. That's all I meant
Right,
in my
right.
original comments, that this is a start, but we didn't include it, so to say, that's what we have. Well, we didn't say if we invest what we've been talking about investing in community engagement for almost 2 years, if we do that, how many students might we pick up? That should be in the calculation of
Right,
an
yeah.
additional, so if it's
That's
an
best.
additional 300, it's an additional 300, not just an additional
Kind
1.
of becomes a little. So the question that seems to be congealing in all of this is, do we want to approve $100,000 today so that we can get the 250 to 300 federal poverty level kids in the pipeline?
So move that we do that.
Second.
Okay, so Tony has moved it and Cheryl's seconding it, so all those in favor, let's do show of hands, it'd be easier. Aye. Those opposed? Those in abstaining? So motion carries on a vote made by Tony Hobson, seconded by Cheryl Rose to authorize immediately going to the 250% level. Yeah, from 250 to 300, I'm sorry. Exactly. This seems to be a popular thing.
We're just happy we're done talking about it.
Thank you.
And it would be so amazing
Right.
if we worked on having more diverse, like community and family providers.
If we need to move into executive session now, the purpose of which is to discuss the potential employment of certain candidates for a Cincinnati preschool executive position. I'll entertain the motion. Who is that? Lauren, thank you very much. And who's, thanks, Pastor Tate. This is a roll call vote, and so let me tick down. So Yusuf Ahmad?
Here?
You say yes.
Yes.
To go, there you go. Debbie Elson.
Yes.
Terry England. Christine Fisher.